Okay, welcome everyone to this episode of One is Enough. On this episode of One is Enough, my co-host, Mike Lalo, is going to be played by Melissa Coleman-Godfrey, who is currently the Transplant Outreach Coordinator for the University of Pennsylvania's Transplant Institute. And the reason for that is because today's episode is all about patients and talking about your need for a kidney. And so we wanted to dedicate the entire time to her and I talking about being a patient and what that is like, having those conversations, especially as we get closer to the holidays when we are around all of our family. In fact, 81% of Americans say that they will be visiting family for the holidays. Only about 55% say they're excited to, which quite frankly, based on my own experience, seems a little high. But anyway, the holidays can be a pretty stressful time. And there are, of course, the taboo topics that you're never allowed to go to. And of course, those are family specific. Generally speaking, it's politics, future children, employment opportunities, and disasters, family scandals, being the single aunt, a role I am always happy to play at the family dining table, and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, like I said, every family has their own things that you don't talk about. But something that we should talk about at these holiday excursions is health. And that can be really daunting to even try to tackle. But it's so important, especially when you're searching for a kidney. A living kidney donor gives you such a better outcome than a deceased donor transplant. So it's worth having those conversations. All right, now I will let Melissa introduce herself. Like I said, she is from Penn. She is currently running the microsite program over there. And she therefore knows a thing or two about transplantation, especially being a patient herself like me.
Samantha, thank you so much. This is an amazing opportunity, and Penn really appreciates and is very grateful to the National Kidney Registry for being such a wonderful partner, and especially in trying to find our recipients living donors. So thank you very much. I do know a lot about transplant as a patient and now as a professional. And I will go back to sitting around. I just turned 52 in June. Last year was my first year at a Thanksgiving that I was actually married. So I'm very familiar with the fact that all of those years sitting around and then getting those, when are you going to get married, Melissa? So I'm very, very, very in the know on that. And I think on the way to the Thanksgiving dinner, I would always come up with some kind of answers that I was going to say. But it's always a big hot topic of conversation. So I will tell you later on about my own personal experience, but also how it's been full circle now that I'm 15 years out with my kidney transplant. And one of my favorite parts of my job is reading all of our kidney transplant recipients' microsites. I approve whether or not they're a Penn patient, and then also read their customized sites where they get to put photos up and all of that and tell their unique story. So I told my new husband last week, I said, I just love my life. I absolutely love my life. Now it's really come full circle. Now I was a patient and now I'm a professional. And now I get to kind of pay my gift forward, so to speak, in helping on podcasts like this. Or I just at Penn on last Tuesday, I talked to our support group, just giving them hope about the whole full circle. I too was a patient that was waiting. I wasn't even on dialysis yet. Then I had 4 years of dialysis, and now to show them I'm 15 years post-transplant. So I'm looking forward to this talking with you today.
Great. So as the holidays approach and as we go through these sometimes mandatory gatherings, how do we even begin to have the conversation of I need a kidney? You can't exactly just go up to somebody in a cold open and go, hey, what are you doing next month? Feel like going through major surgery? Maybe you have that relationship with your family, but I certainly don't.
Sure.
That's not how I found mine, but in some circumstances that might be appropriate. I don't know, but I don't think it is.
It's so true. I think the best way is just to tell them like what you're going through. You can't get your own personal story wrong. This is what you're going through. And I will share with you that this was back in 2006. I had already been on dialysis for 2 years. And the way I found out I was even in kidney failure is that I was working down in Philadelphia, in Center City. And I decided I'm already taking the train from my condo into Philadelphia, taking the subway over to my job. And I thought, Children's Hospital is only right, nearby. So why don't I fill out an application, a volunteer application, so I could, what I had in my head was I was going to read to sick kids on the ward or what have you. Like I just wanted to, I'm already using my time to commute into the city. So how can I help out and give back to my community? So I actually got the application, I read it, and then it said at the bottom you had to go to your primary care physician and get a physical and submit that with your application. Obviously, you don't want volunteers that are sick or what have you around sick children. So I went to my primary care physician. They've been my primary care since I've been in kindergarten, and this is in my late 20s. I'd already graduated from Penn State, and so I don't know when the last time I had a physical was. It was probably to get like on intramural sports or something in high school. I know that, like, when do you go back to your primary if you're not sick with strep throat or, or what have you? So
yeah, like maybe when you're buying insurance or something like
Oh,
that.
exactly,
Like when do you do that when you're healthy
Sure.
in your 20s?
Sure. So, and actually this primary care physician practice, we used to go to their house in Malvern, outside of Philadelphia. Like that's how like antiquated it was. Like we would go to the house and then they got a practice in Paoli. So I went and didn't think anything of it. Okay. And a couple of days later, again, they've known me since I've been in kindergarten, and they called me and they said, Melissa, we have some disturbing news that we got to tell you. And I was like, okay. And they're like, we found protein in your urine. And I was like, okay, I know it's bubbly, but I don't compare my bowl of urine next to somebody else's. So you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
The things that you end up doing when you have kidney health issues and the things you end up talking about are so far beyond normal.
I know. And you know what? So my primary care physician's telling me, so we found, there's protein in your urine and we're going to have to send you to a nephrologist. Okay. Now I'm in my early 20s, right? And I'm like, could you tell me what a nephrologist is? I have no idea what that is. And then they said, okay, it's a kidney specialist. Okay. A doctor. Right. And so they gave me a referral to a kidney doctor, and I don't even tell my parents that I'm going because I thought that somehow they got this wrong. I'm feeling okay. Do you know? And then I made an appointment with this nephrologist, and I go. And here, I didn't tell my parents, so I just went by myself. And I remember them telling me that I'm in end-stage renal failure. And the word end is really, really disturbing. I don't care if you're in your 20s like I was, or if you're in your 80s or 90s. And how do you recover from end? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't... Yeah. So I always say today, like, give me a stage number or what have you. I can beat a number. I can't beat that word end, right? So I remember on the way out, they handed me a 24-hour urine jug, right? And it had a big poisonous sticker on it, right? And they said, we need you to collect your urine for 24 hours and we need you to refrigerate it, okay? And I'm like, so I'm working at the University of Penn on the academic side, and I said, "You want me to refrigerate my urine and like leave it next to my coworkers' cream for their coffee?" Do you know? Like I was like, "What is going on here?" Do you know? So when I came home with all of this, and they never gave me a hat for the toilet. I know we're getting into the details. Can you imagine collecting your urine in that little clear cup with the light blue lid? Do you know? Yeah. And that's how I'm collecting my urine for 24 hours. And then I had to go and drop that off back at the nephrologist.
And trust me, I've heard of weird stuff. We've actually had donors walk through Quest Labs because I think we used, I don't know if we still have them do it, but donors had to do a 24-hour urine collection at one point, and we had donors who were going through the NCare system holding the urine jug, but they were healthy and they had good kidneys and they hydrate, and so they'll have like that and like a full milk carton next to it.
Oh my goodness!
And it's like, well, I ran out of space. It's like, what do with this?
Oh my goodness. It is. It's like if you don't know anything about it, you don't know what's normal or abnormal, right? So I remember then I had to tell my parents because I came home with all of these supplies, right? And I said, I don't know what's going on, but this sounds kind of serious, right? So then that's when I was sent to get a biopsy. And I was going through a myriad of tests. At first, they thought I had lupus because I had, I guess, symptoms of lupus. I did not have diabetes or anything like that. So I went through the gamut of testings. So when I went for the kidney biopsy, I learned that I have FSGS, and it's idiopathic, which idiopathic means they have no idea how I got it, right? So, and FSGS is focal segmental glomerular sclerosis. So what I learned was the sclerosis part is like the scarring of the little glomeruli in my kidneys. And that's why the scarring was causing the protein to be leaked into my urine. And like the nephrologist said to me, he goes, well, the reason why when you had that physical done, we knew there was something wrong with your kidneys because the protein was leaking into your urine. So it's like a spaghetti and a colander. So if the spaghetti is getting through the colander and it's going into the sink, then we know something's wrong because your kidneys aren't functioning properly. And so I was like, okay, well, what kind of medicine can I do to get this fixed? Yeah. I was walking around with end-stage renal failure, and that's scary. So I was like, how do we correct this? Like, do I need to get a antibiotic? Like, what are the treatment options, right? And then it was getting scary because my, creatinine, which is a big indicator of kidney failure. And I used to think, oh, I can get a spreadsheet together and I can, on this date, my creatinine's this number. And then the amount of time by the time I have my labs done the next time, I have this number. So I was thinking, when do I have to go on this dialysis thing? Like I was hoping I would get cured or whatever before that even was an option, right? And unfortunately, they did tell me, Melissa, we can't plot on a graph to say, okay, you can linger for years. I don't know if that was true for you, Samantha, but like I hovered in like the twos for a long, long time.
No. No, when I had mine, it was beyond failure. They were, if you're talking about the scary word end, when I was finally admitted to the hospital that cold February night, I was in stage 5, completely no kidneys whatsoever, had not had kidneys for months, and they were telling my parents we're very sorry. They were pretty sure I was going to die. So no, there was never any hope of outlasting anything, because by my time, there was nothing left. There was absolutely no kidney left.
Wow.
But that's kind of common, I think, because everybody, you can lose 30 to 40% of your kidney function and have no symptoms whatsoever. None.
And the little symptoms I had, I excused them away because I didn't know they were kidney failure symptoms. Like in college, they always were like, Melissa's always sleeping or like always tired or whatever. And I just thought I was burning the candle at both ends. Like I would start my papers at 11 o'clock or right when I would watch David Letterman. Do you know what I mean? Like This is the thing. Like I just thought it was my habits and culture that was causing this. I had edema a lot of times, where I had the fluid, and I just thought, oh, I got to back off like the potato chips or, I just excused, and I kind of always felt a little lethargic, but I didn't know like I was in kidney failure.
The symptoms of kidney failure can sneak up on you so much because they're so nondescript. Yeah. They're so just sneaky, quite frankly,
They
is the
are.
only way to describe them, because there are these things that just kind of come in and you wish them away because you say, oh, well, I guess I just didn't get enough sleep last night. And, it's like when you go online when you have a cold and
Oh, and you
you Google your
self-diagnose.
symptoms.
Yes,
And it's like, based
I
on the
have
fact that I
pancreatitis or pancreatitis or something, right?
yeah, so literally a coworker of mine had a stomach virus last week. And, based on his symptoms, he talked to a friend and the friend was like, oh, you got to go see a doctor. You probably have stomach cancer. And he's like, I had a virus. It's like, I'm not,
I know.
he's like, I had a virus. Now I'm freaked out. Now I feel like I have to do it. And it's like, okay, go for it. But like, it was a virus. But it's the same thing with here. It's like, who's going to Google fatigue and go straight to kidney failure? They're going to go to another night's sleep.
Right. So I truly thank those kids that I was wanting to volunteer for, like those, that me wanting to help them, they immensely helped me because I was textbook Melissa, because I was followed as soon as I got a hold, that I was under the care of a nephrologist, then I actually was able to go through all of the necessary milestones, like try a preemptive transplant, right? So that's where my two brothers, when I was being evaluated in January 2004 at Penn with, for a kidney transplant, I have no other major issues going on, no other comorbidities. It was just me and FSGS, right? Mm-hmm. So I was pretty standard to be listed. So at that time, my parents and my two brothers, my brother Jim's 5 years older than me, and my oldest brother Michael is 7 years older than me. And we went down as a family. It was the first time we've ever been like the immediate family, because my brothers are, since they're older, they're married and they have children or what have you. So it was so cool just to go down there and, my parents are worried about me. They're also worried about my brothers being living donors. And then, our teams are quite separate. I have my recipient team worried about me and only me, making sure I'm a good candidate. And then the living donors, these potential heroes, they're worried about them and only them, and they're separated. And I felt really good about that, because in going along with telling people at the holidays your situation, I always felt like, what happens now if FSGS is running on our family, and mm-hmm. my nieces and nephews have FSGS. I would want my brothers to give to their own kids before they thought of me, their sister. Do you know? Mm-hmm. And what happens if I didn't have the best, I have the best sister-in-laws, but what happens if they said, you know what, we want you holding on to your kidneys in case our kids need it, do you know? Mm-hmm. And so I truly appreciated the fact that they have their own team worried about them and only them. And, if they're not going to be coerced into giving it to me because I need a kidney.
Yeah. I mean, that system is still in place today, correct?
Yes, it is.
And it's fantastic, but it can cause a lot of friction.
Yes.
Because you're not allowed to know where in the process any donor is. And so it can lead to a lot of frustration because, a donor might medical back out, quote unquote.
Sure.
And it's just, your sibling doesn't want to donate and they use a medical out, and then the patient gets mad at the transplant center. But in fact, it's just them protecting the donor because they are supposed to protect them because they're their team. That's the donor's team. That's not yours.
That's correct. You never want to harm a hero. And actually, I liked that fact that anybody could back out at any single time. And it gave them the out, and their team would just tell, like you just said, they would tell that they were medically unsuitable. And because you're right, it could cause major frictions in families if they knew they just backed out because they were nervous or, what have you.
Yeah, I actually, when we were going through my relatives back in the Stone Age of transplantation before paired exchange, I had an uncle who came forward to get tested and then said, I don't want to continue. I'm scared of surgery. And I think that's a big part of it. And this, goes right into the topic of how to discuss it and what happens when you discuss it. Right. So you can never go into this conversation with any sort of preconceived notions of A, who is going to donate?
Yes.
B, why somebody will back out? Who will back out?
That's
who
right.
is not, quote unquote, healthy enough according to, you? Who is healthy enough according to you? I mean, that's the transplant center's job to figure out. But the other one is, mentally, you don't know where people are. You don't know where people are. Like you said, and this does happen, your sister-in-law, who's, wonderful according to you, could have said to her husband, not a chance.
That's right.
You have to donate for our kids someday, potentially, because now we know it's in your family.
Yeah. And they don't, because it's idiopathic, they don't know what, was I born with it? Is it going to be running in our families? Or was it like a strep throat I never took care of or what have you, because it attacked my, kidney. And so I think you have to stay positive, and your job as a recipient that's looking for a donor, in my opinion, is really just to tell your unique story. And just because I think people want to help, yes. I think really people are inquiring how they can help. And even if they don't want to get tested themselves, they can be deemed your physician or your potential champion, your living donor champion, where they will do everything, send out the social media campaigns, get the word out that you're in need. And I think that's just as important, so everybody wants to help, but they might have a different role in which they play in order to get you a transplant.
Actually, my co-host's wife, who donated her liver, found out that the gentleman who needed a liver, he wasn't the one that asked. He talked to, I think, his superior in the court system, and that person decided to send out a mass email. You never know who's willing to do what and who can do what.
That's right. And it was disappointing to me that when my two brothers, I was getting tested to be evaluated, and my brothers were at that same day being tested to be living donors, we just thought my brothers were healthy and, they have no problems. My one brother, Jim, he never knew he had high blood pressure until he went to get tested. So now the two leading causes to get on dialysis are high blood pressure and diabetes. And so at that time, I know now you can be on a statin if if you have controlled blood pressure. No.
Things have also changed a lot since you're in my transplant. So
yes.
You are 15 years out. I'm almost 17 years out. I like to call those the Stone Age of transplantation. So things have changed. I mean, there's actually, there are certain trials being done now with HIV positive to HIV positives.
Exactly.
There's statin stuff that's okay now. BMI, they've changed. Age has, gotten a little bit looser depending on which transplant center you're at. Everything's different now from when you and I got our transplant. So I just like to put that PSA out there.
Yes,
First
exactly.
and foremost.
And I totally agree. And I wish I had what they have nowadays with social media. I was not on Facebook. I don't even know if I had a MySpace page. I don't
even know if Facebook was invented yet when I had my transplant. But back to actually, sitting at that Thanksgiving table, carving the turkey.
Sure.
And saying, by the way, I'm dying and need your help.
So I will share with you, and I'll actually read, because back in the day when we were getting our transplants, right? And, we didn't have social media or these outlets where we can share our need for a transplant. So I was thinking to myself, so both my brothers, I told you, Jim had high blood pressure, so he was ruled out at that time. My oldest brother had kidney stones, a history of kidney stones. And since I was fairly young, they didn't want to give me a compromised kidney. So they said, you know what, for your first kidney, we want to give you a better kidney option. So I was so at that time I had, my immediate family, and my parents were too old. So I didn't know how I was going to go about, and I didn't feel comfortable asking directly at the Thanksgiving table. But what I chose to do, and I think you can kind of make this up to date and current, is that on your microsite or what have you, but I chose to do a Christmas card letter, those mass letters that I never thought I would do. So I'm going to read to you a little bit about the first paragraph. And on the back of this, it's on the pretty snowflake paper, and it's a 2-pager front and back. And at the bottom of this letter, it says, I feel a bit awkward providing the following information, but if anyone is interested in finding out more on organ donation, please contact Penn's transplant donor coordinator. I give her name, phone number, and then or visit the Penn Health, the website. And I said, many thanks in advance for this preliminary consideration of such a big gift of life. And so I'll share with you how I decided to go about using this as my instrument in finding a living donor. I said, "Dear family and friends," and this is December 2006. "Happy holidays from Elverson, PA. You should never say never, because I always said that I would never send a mass mailing letter. And here I find myself on my new laptop writing such a letter. Oh, well, these things happen. As many of you already know, that I am retired of sorts at the age of 35, a mere 32 years before my peers will be retiring. After 2 years of doing at least 9 hours of dialysis every night and working full-time at the University of Pennsylvania, I and my doctors came to the conclusion that I was doing more harm than good by trying to do it all. I made the extremely tough decision that my health was foremost and that I could replace everything in my life, but I couldn't replace myself. So my last day at work was on Friday, July 7th. You would think that not working would be a piece of cake, but I'm finding it very difficult. I definitely feel for retirees my parents' age, because you work most of your life at such a frenetic pace, and then it all halts and you are left to develop your own daily rhythm. There's only so much bad TV you can watch." And so I tried to tell my story about my physical health. I'm on dialysis, waiting for a transplant. And then I continue and I said, hopefully my newfound retirement will only be temporary until I get a successful kidney transplant. Last January, my transplant doctors told me that the average wait for a new kidney with my blood type would be about 3.5 to 4 years. And since I've been on the National UNOS United Network for Organ Sharing list since January 2004, I hope to receive one in the next year or so. I really am looking forward to feeling better, more like myself, and to resume my new and improved life. And like I said, at the bottom, I put my coordinator's information so that anybody, and now in today's day and age, you tell your story, they're so compelled, and then they push the button to see if they're screened. So it's
Right.
like automatic, you know?
Yeah. So what I think is a very important thing that in that letter, that quite frankly, and I feel like I'm going to insult you by saying this, so please don't take it as an insult, is that you're missing the you can be a living donor. And I say this because I think part of the conversation around the Thanksgiving table or around the family reunion or whatever has to also be that you can donate as a living person.
That's right.
And we've seen this so many times, again, with our head coach, our head microsite coach, who is a donor himself, had no idea. He had a brother in kidney failure. He had no idea that he could donate as a living person. And I think that's a common thought in people's head because, you see the donate life bumper stickers and the share, the sign your license thing at the DMV, but you don't really see that much advertisement on become a living donor. You can do it while living.
I agree with you. I think you're right. And back then, I wasn't as savvy as people today. And you're right. I think not. I always say this when I go to dialysis centers and educate the patients about, transplant in general, and then, how to get referred to pen transplant. But I always say knowledge is power. The more you know about something, you can make a better decision. And then also now you can appeal for more living donors, because you're right. The more they know about, hey, and they can talk to now during the process, and Samantha, you can expand on this, is that once they fill out that little initial screening, then actually a donor mentor calls them, right? And
Correct.
I think that is key, because then they can talk to someone that has gone through it and alleviate some of those maybe fears or anxieties that they've already come up with about how to do this. And they can actually talk to them and find out more about it and then make a decision to go further in the process. So I think it's a key element to have that donor mentor right at that time after they fill out the initial screening.
Absolutely, because it takes the guesswork out. It takes the mystery out of it. It's kind of like when you're in high school and everybody's afraid of taking calculus, and then you take calculus and realize, oh, this is what it is?
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah, sure.
It's not astrophysics? Okay, that's not so bad.
It's always the unknown is always scary, right? It really is.
Yeah. So if you see somebody if you talk to somebody who's already gone through it, like a donor mentor, it takes that guesswork out of like, am I gonna be fine? Is my hair gonna turn green? Like what happens after we donate? Oh, you're normal. Oh,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
I can do this too.
And actually,
I
I've
think
never met a living donor in the entire years of just being a transplant recipient, as well on the professional side. I've never met a living donor that hasn't wanted to do it all over again because
correct.
I haven't. It's just that altruistic gift that they give, it inspires people, right? And they get more out of it because they got to help somebody. And in actuality, the surgery is a little more like difficult for them because you're taking, you know that they're in good health because we've checked them out at the transplant centers from head to toe to make sure that they are a good candidate and we're not going to do any harm. But like when they're going through this optional surgery to, help somebody else, it's really incredible. So often the recipient, if you know the living donor, the recipient is the one that's going to visit the living donor in the hospital, which is,
Yeah. Well, so we actually, a good friend of the podcast and the NKR, Mimi Mahan, who herself was on an episode of One Is Enough, and is a phenomenal donor advocate and donor athlete. She always says she got more out of it than what she lost. She gained more than she lost because you end up in this community of like-minded donors. And to your point, I've also never met a donor that said they didn't want to do it. I have met a donor who had to go through the process the old-fashioned way where they cracked the rib.
Oh, boy.
Who then ended up with pneumonia afterward because they didn't get him up and walking soon enough, and who had the most horrendous experience of his life. And he still says, I would do it all again for my brother. I would go through every single piece of that for my brother.
Ah, amazing.
And that's what these people are. They're heroes. They're phenomenal.
They really are. I've been able to go. I'm sorry.
Sorry. But they're also normal people. They're also that guy sitting next to you at the Thanksgiving table.
Yes.
They're your uncle. They're the electrician down the road. They're your mailman. You never honestly know who could potentially be your donor.
Prior to me getting sick, I would take a class in Prague, the Czech Republic. That was definitely part of who I was. That's what made me alive and vibrant, And so when I was like kind of sidetracked being on dialysis for all those years and being sick, that's what motivated me. So when people knew that I wanted to travel again. So now I pretty much send a Christmas card letter letting everybody know where I've been the whole time, And
That's
now
awesome.
I get to do it with my husband. And at my wedding last October, Sean's family was there. And I wanted to make it special that his dad wore a boutonniere and, that because I wouldn't have all these milestones without having them say yes to organ donation.
Right.
So.
And I think that also has to be part of the conversation of these are the things that I'm going to miss out on if I don't get a kidney. And I want to do them. I mean, that's it. That's all. I think also education is really important going into that conversation of what can be expected as a donor. And we do have an episode on that, or will, depending on release schedule. And then I think you also need to respect their reactions. Because their initial reaction might not be their final reaction. Their initial reaction would be, oh, God, no. How can you even talk about this at the Thanksgiving table?
I know. I'm about ready to eat my turkey and cranberry sauce, And now
you're talking about hooking up to a dialysis machine and filtering your blood. How could you? Okay, don't take that personally.
Yes.
Yeah,
and you're right. You have to think about how you reacted. Like when that nephrologist, when I ended up there and he was like, you're in end stage renal failure. Like, I was like, you've got to be kidding me, So you're right. And now that we have been educated all this time, you can't just drop it in somebody's lap, So you have to be thoughtful about how you're going to share it, what you're going to share. You have to remain positive. And maybe it's a time, maybe after dinner, maybe you can go grab a cup of coffee with them or or you can have like a messenger like thing or something.
Which goes back to what I said earlier, whereas don't reinvent the wheel. If you know that your Aunt Maggie is really private about her health stuff, go grab a cup of coffee with her. Go do something else with her the next morning. Say, okay, we're going to go get coffee for the family and go with her for that and do it privately in the car. Or if you know Uncle Bobby, or no, you have an Uncle Bobby, so I'm not going to use that. Uncle Doug is a loudmouth blowhard, maybe you don't do him in front of your entire family because his reaction might come out and overshadow theirs.
That's right.
You know your family best and how to talk to them and what audience is which, right?
And again, maybe you could find like just surveying the table, right? And saying, you know what? I don't think this is the proper time, but maybe I'm going to reach out to these 3 people afterwards, and kind of strategize how you're going to do that. And then maybe they are going to be the person that's going to be your living donor champion, that's going to maybe come up with those social media campaigns for you, or even I've talked to one of our liver transplant microsites, who's waiting for a liver, and they actually have like almost real estate signs outside of their house with their NKR addressed, spreading the word. I've known people at the Phillies game, go Phillies, but at the Phillies game have shirts with the NKR, like their microsite to get screened. So I mean, just thinking outside the box, there's many different types. You have to be creative, and
which is where your coach can come in, because they can help you brainstorm these ideas. They're really good at that. They really are helpful in terms of that.
And at Penn,
I mean,
I'm sorry, at Penn, we have a social media tip where it's you can write to the, in this area in Philadelphia, we do have so many wonderful transplant programs. So, the news and all of that is quite familiar, but everybody, and this is what I want to key on, is that everybody has a unique story, and your story is worth telling. And don't think that, you don't have enough to say or you're not worthy. You do. Every single person on a wait list at a transplant center has a story to tell, and they have potential people that could, get screened and donate to them.
Yeah, I had this conversation with a fellow recipient at one point, and the fact of the matter is, one of our most popular microsites was a Vietnam photographer. And another one was a 9/11 fireman, right? Not everybody's a 9/11 fireman. Not everybody is a Vietnam photographer.
Right.
Not everybody is this exceptional, obvious hero. Some people are accountants, and they sit in their cubicles for their whole lives until retirement. But here's the thing. Did you help somebody? Did you help somebody figure out their taxes when they were having a heart attack? They were going to owe the government tens of thousands of dollars. And it was like, no, you made an error. You owe like 2.
Right.
Everybody has had some sort of impact on somebody else. And you don't necessarily know how important it is.
That's so true. One of my favorite recipients did their microsite, and he was a young dad, and he had 3 sons, and each paragraph on the microsite is in the voice of each child. And so I don't know, but I think one of them was like, I want my daddy to be my baseball coach, or, things that they wanted to look for their daddy, because right now he's so sick, he can't participate like that, And
well, it's those milestones that you miss out on. It's those milestones that you miss out on because you're on dialysis, because you're not healthy enough, because you're fatigued, et cetera, et cetera. And it goes back to that point of talking to your relatives about the things that you want to do and things that your friends want you to do.
Yeah. And I think all you want to do is just be back to what you knew as your old normal, because this is your new normal. But it's true. You don't realize when you're in kidney failure how such a slow decline you're in. But it's really I used to think everything was like an uphill battle, just even the simplest things of doing laundry. I'm like, oh my goodness, because I was trying to, have a full-time job. I was commuting and doing, my 10 hours of dialysis every night. And I was just struggling. And I think that's where your friends and family, they want to help. They really do. They see you struggling. And I think when they offer to help, you can start educating them about what you're going through, and all these resources on the National Kidney Registry site and then their microsite, and they can help you spread the word,
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I am going to thank Melissa wholeheartedly and UPenn for letting us have her today on our What Is Enough podcast. Is there anything before we head out that you want to just impart on potential recipients, as we like to call them?
I just want to make sure that they know their story is enough and that they can certainly share all of that. And I hope everybody has a happy holiday.
Amen to that. Happy Thanksgiving and happy the rest of the holidays. This is planned to be our Thanksgiving episode, so I'm going to go with Happy Thanksgiving for this one.
Happy Thanksgiving. Don't eat too much, though.
We're calling this one a double dose of gratitude. So,
I love that.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us and tuning in, and thank you, Melissa and UPenn, for coming on and helping us educate patients and spread the word and normalize.
We look forward to partnering again. I hope this is one of many, maybe.
Yes, and normalize kidney transplantation and the discussion surrounding it.
You can learn more about the podcast by visiting kidneyregistry.org/one. When you're there, you can sign up to be on our email list so that you'll be the first to know when we drop a new episode. And trust me, you want to be the first to know.